You wake up to the sound of a bell. Not the charming kind that chimes in a cathedral at a respectful hour. No, this one clangs like a drunk blacksmith using a frying pan to fight off a goose. It's the middle of the night. Or what feels like it. Time is meaningless because your concept of a clock is a candle in a metal box with notches carved in it. The wax is halfway melted. That means it's your turn. Congratulations. You're a medieval watchman. Your bed, if we're being generous, is a Strasta sack that hasn't been changed since the last king was alive. It smells like damp burlap, old soup, and regret. Your blanket is technically a piece of cloth, but in practice, it's just slightly thicker air. The draft from the cracked stone wall ensures that your nightly experience is like being hugged by a dead fish in a freezer. Your bones crack like a bag of walnuts as you stand. You've slept in your clothes because changing them requires owning more than one set. And you are not a noble. You are barely even a peasant. You are a watchman. Not glamorous. Not powerful. Just a warm body who knows how to shout who goes there and occasionally poke things with a stick. Your tunic smells like yesterday's sweat, which smells remarkably similar to the day before sweat. Your boots, made from the stiff leather of an animal whose species you couldn't identify even when it was alive, go on reluctantly. They're soaked through from last night's rain and possibly also last week's sewage. And then, the best part, you get to go outside. So before you settle into the delightful misery that is medieval urban law enforcement, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of sleepy torture by history. And drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see which time zones are trying to fall asleep while learning about how much it sucked to be alive in the 1300s. You step out into the street. It's dark. Not modern dark. There are no street lights. No faint glow of neon signs. No nearby porch light to comfort you. Just full, crushing, ink-drenched darkness. The kind where you could lose your hand in front of your face and not find it again until Thursday. You're equipped with a lantern. It's not battery-powered, because this is 1357, not a camping trick. It's a rusty metal box with a hole punched in one side and a bit of tallow burning inside. It smells like a pig on fire. It casts just enough light to illuminate your feet and the two rats contemplating mugging you. Your job? Walk the same route through town all night. Repeat it until your legs give out or your shift ends, whichever comes first. Your route is part alley, part mud puddle, part suspicious darkness. You're meant to look for thieves, fires, or signs of insurrection. But mostly you look for trouble, and then immediately regret finding it. There's no police force in this town. You are the law. You and maybe 3 other underpaid, underfed, underwhelming men who also didn't have enough coin to bribe their way into a less awful career. Sometimes, you're joined by a local drunk who has mistaken you for a priest. He offers you half a turnip and some advice about demons. You accept both. The town smells like damp hay, burning dung, and a faint suggestion of fish, even though you're miles from a sea. That's because the medieval sanitation system is basically throw it out the window and pray. Waste, all kinds of waste, flows through open ditches on the sides of the street. If it's rained recently, your boots are now a medieval stew of rainwater, pig droppings, and yesterday's dinner. And it has rained. Of course it has. You're in Northern Europe. The only place wetter is the bottom of a well. Your cloak, generously issued to you by the town, is made of wool so coarse it could exfoliate a rhinoceros. It is water-resistant in the same way a biscuit is. It absorbs everything, gets heavier, and slowly disintegrates. You're supposed to shout all's well every so often. Not because all is well, but because that's your job. To reassure the townspeople, who are asleep in their lice-infested beds, that someone is awake and watching. Even though you can't see much and couldn't stop a serious crime with your equipment, which consists of a stick, a lantern, and a deep sense of existential dread. All's well, you call out, your voice echoing off crooked wooden houses. A dog howls in response. You hear a cat scream, then silence. Somewhere nearby, a very drunk man is singing a song about sausages and women. You don't investigate. That's the secret to being a good watchman. Don't get involved unless you absolutely have to. And even then, do it slowly. There is no backup. If you find someone breaking into a shop, you can't call for help on your medieval walkie-talkie. You shout, loudly, and hope one of the other watchmen hears you and isn't asleep or dead or distracted by something shiny. If help does arrive, it's usually another man with a stick and an even worse attitude. Sometimes, the town hires men-at-arms, professionals with actual weapons and rudimentary armor. But those guys are expensive and not particularly friendly. They treat you like a talking beetle and will absolutely let you handle the worst bits while they supervise. As you pass by a row of houses, you notice one of them has a faint glow from the window. Candlelight. Unusual at this hour. You're supposed to knock and ask if everything's all right. But you don't, because it's probably just someone with dysentery. You keep walking. You'll log it later as no signs of fire. That's the important part. Fires spread fast here, what with the houses being made of dry timber and dreams. You pass the bakery. It smells like old flour and warm yeast. That would be pleasant, except the smell is mixed with that of a nearby tannery. For the unfamiliar, tanning hides involve soaking them in a solution made from dog poop and urine. It smells like betrayal and foot rot. It takes skill to breathe through your mouth and still want to die, but somehow you manage it. The town isn't big. Maybe a few hundred people. A couple dozen households. But the streets are narrow, winding, and poorly lit. You trip over a chicken. Or maybe it was a small child. Hard to say. It screeches and vanishes into the dark. You wonder, not for the first time, why you didn't choose a better life. A blacksmith's apprentice, maybe. Or a stable boy. But no, you had to be the guy who checks doors at midnight and shouts into puddles. The townspeople appreciate you, in the same way one appreciates plumbing, silently and only when something goes wrong. You remember one of your predecessors. Old Gilbert. Disappeared one night. Nobody ever found him. Some say he ran off to join a monastery. Others say he got eaten by wolves. You suspect he just walked into the river and didn't come out. You envy him a little. The night drags on. Your candle runs low. You replace it with another stub of wax, praying it lasts. There's no Amazon to order more. You get what the town budget allows, and the town budget is 3 turnips and an IOU from the mayor. Eventually, your shift ends. You make your way back to the watchman's post. It's not a proper building, more of a slightly enclosed lean-to. Inside, another man waits, bleary-eyed and chewing something that looks suspiciously like bark. You nod to each other, silently passing the torch of mediocrity. You lie back down on your damp straw bed, boots still on, because there's no point taking them off. You close your eyes. You've survived another night. And tomorrow, you get to do it all again. If you're lucky, it won't rain. And no one will throw a dead pig at you. Again. But don't worry. We're only just getting started. You wake up, again, and your entire body feels like it was used as a battering ram in a siege. The kind of dull, full-body ache that only comes from sleeping on hay that's been compressed by generations of bad decisions. Your back is now shaped like a question mark. Your pillow is just a pile of cloth scraps stuffed into a bag that smells like pickled disappointment. Outside, the sky is pretending to be morning. A sort of dark gray smear that barely qualifies as dawn. There's no sun yet, just a slightly lighter shade of hopelessness creeping over the horizon. Birds chirp like they've just inhaled espresso, which is impressive since coffee hasn't reached your part of Europe yet. What you do have is something the town calls ale, which tastes like watery bread and sadness, and is considered an acceptable breakfast. Your shift is over, but your day isn't. You're a medieval watchman. That means your entire existence is one long unpaid internship in civic responsibility. You're expected to help clean the main square, which is code for scrape off the remains of last night's festival, which is code for shovel human waste and vomit off cobblestones. You grab a broom. Not a modern, neat, bristle-ended tool. No, this one is a bunch of twigs tied to a stick with a strip of leather that's fraying faster than your will to live. The square is sticky. Smells like someone fermented goats and left them out in the sun. Which, considering yesterday was St. Ulrich's Day, is likely exactly what happened. You sweep in silence. Occasionally you nod at a passing merchant, who nods back in that grim way medieval people greet each other, like two people acknowledging they've both seen terrible things and probably will again by lunchtime. A pig wanders through the square. No one owns it. Pigs are just there. They serve as trash disposal, mobile alarm systems, and sometimes lunch. The baker's apprentice runs past you, carrying a tray of something vaguely bread-shaped. She trips, drops half of it, shrugs, and continues on. You stare at the baked wreckage. It's still probably cleaner than anything you've eaten this week. Halfway through your sweeping, someone yells about a fire. This happens at least once a week. Fires are not rare. Everything is flammable: roofs, floors, emotions. You jog toward the commotion. Well, it's more of a weary shuffle that technically counts as jogging. Turns out it's not a fire. Just smoke from a chimney that's clogged with bird nests. Again, you squint up at the roof. Sure enough, a goose is nesting in the chimney. It honks at you with the righteous fury of a bird who has chosen violence. You wave your broom at it and get a face full of soot in return. Being a watchman is not glamorous. You don't carry a sword. You're not riding into battle. You're not rescuing maidens or collecting taxes. You're doing the jobs nobody wants: watching, sweeping, shouting occasionally, and trying not to get stabbed over a loaf of bread. The town doesn't trust you, but it also relies on you. You're expected to keep the peace, but without actually enforcing anything that would inconvenience the town's more important citizens. Like the merchant guild, or the mayor's cousin, or anyone with a horse. There was that one time you tried to stop a minor noble from drunkenly setting a cart on fire. He called you a mud-witted peasant goblin, then threw up on your boots. The next day, you were fined for interfering with noble leisure. You paid in potatoes. The fine collector looked sad about it, but still took the potatoes. Later in the day, you're called to investigate a suspicious noise, which is medieval code for someone's goat got loose and is screaming like it saw the devil. You find it in the alley behind the tanner's shop, stuck halfway into a barrel, possibly trying to eat the pickled fish inside. You try to coax it out. It kicks you in the shin. You limp back to the square and consider taking an early lunch. Lunch, in this world, is not a time for delicacies. There are no sandwiches, no fresh fruit, no kale, just a bowl of mush. It's technically pottage, a delightful slurry of barley, water, herbs, and whatever meat-adjacent substance was available. Today, it might be turnip or squirrel. You try not to ask. You sit on a log and eat in silence. Around you, the town buzzes with the dull hum of survival. Children run barefoot, yelling about dragons. A woman yells at them to go bother someone else. A cart full of onions collapses in front of the blacksmith shop. No one helps. Just another Tuesday. You finish your pottage and wish you hadn't. It sits in your stomach like a warm stone. But it's calories. And in this town, that's about as good as currency. You consider napping. You do not, because last time you tried that during daylight, someone stole your shoes. You spend the afternoon training with a new watchman. He's 15, smells like goat, and carries his stick like he's preparing to joust a wizard. You show him the usual route, explain how to avoid the town drunk, turn left at the chicken coop, and where to stand to look like you're doing something important. He nods and immediately falls into a puddle. You fish him out, pat him on the back, and offer the most encouraging words you can muster: "You'll get used to it. Or you'll leave. Or you'll die. Either way, it won't be your problem." Evening creeps in. Again. It always does. The candle stub you saved from last night is now your primary light source. Your shift starts again in a few hours, so you decide to rest your eyes. Not sleep. Just rest. You lie back in the lean-to. It's slightly warmer now, thanks to the dying embers of a brazier someone remembered to fill. You watch the smoke curl upward. The roof leaks. A single drop of rain hits your forehead. You sigh. Then it hits you. This is your life. You are not a knight. You are not a scholar. You are not a monk writing the histories of kings. You are a watchman. Your job is to keep the night boring. Your reward is not dying. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings. It's not your turn yet, but it will be. You stretch your sore limbs and mutter to yourself, "One more night." You don't believe it, but you say it anyway. And so begins another shift. You wake up again, but you're not sure if you ever actually slept. It feels more like you temporarily lost consciousness in a position resembling a crime scene chalk outline. Your body makes a series of noises that can only be described as medieval Morse code for "send help." Everything hurts, including your eyelids, which shouldn't even have muscles. It's dusk now. The sky is doing that thing where it looks peaceful and golden, like a painting, right before it turns into a blanket of horror. Your internal body clock, calibrated by nothing but candle stubs and the involuntary twitching of your left leg, tells you it's time to rise and resume your noble post. You sit up slowly. The straw bed has begun to take root in your clothes. You pick bits of it out of your hair while contemplating your life choices. You could have been a thatcher, a woodcutter, even a shepherd. But no, you had to sign up for community defense, which sounded brave at the time and now feels like unpaid purgatory. The brazier in the corner is cold. No one bothered to refill it. So the room, and we're using that word generously, is somewhere between damp cellar and morgue. You rub your hands together, not because it helps, but because it makes you feel like you're still a person and not just a meat statue. You pull your cloak around you. It's still wet from 2 days ago. It's always wet. No one remembers the last time it was dry. The leather on your boots is cracked like dried soup, and your toes have developed a new game: which one of us is gangrenous? You light your lantern. It takes 5 tries and a whispered prayer to St. Jude, patron saint of lost causes. A dull flame finally flickers to life, illuminating a generous 3 inches in front of you. Perfect. You're now ready to patrol like a blind mole with a head injury. Outside, the wind howls. You step into the night and immediately question your sanity. The air is sharp, like it's been personally insulted and has come to take it out on your face. You squint into the gloom and start walking your route. The cobblestones are slick with mystery. It hasn't rained in 2 days, but everything is still wet. Welcome to the medieval hydrology paradox. Nothing dries, ever, and everything smells faintly of cabbage. You pass by the carpenter's shop. The door is shut, the shutters are drawn, but you still hear the rhythmic thump of someone doing something suspicious. You knock. A grunt answers. You decide it's not your business. If someone's being murdered, they're doing it quietly and with decent timing. You walk on. The town is asleep, mostly. A few windows still glow with candlelight. Someone's playing a lute in the distance, badly. It sounds like a cat being slowly unzipped. You make a mental note to investigate if the noise continues. You won't. But it's good to feel responsible. All's well, you call out. No one replies. Good. That means either they're asleep or they've given up. You round the corner by the apothecary's hut. The air immediately becomes hostile to your nose. Herbs, potions, pickled animal bits, and something that smells like ancient feet. You try not to breathe. You fail. The apothecary once gave you something for a rash. It worked, but your tongue turned green for 3 days. You decided it was a fair trade. As you continue your patrol, you start to notice the little things. A cat following you. A creaking sign above the inn. A drunk man sleeping in a barrel. You poke the barrel. He doesn't move. You decide he's either unconscious or very committed to performance art. You reach the town gates. They're shut and barred. You knock 3 times. A voice above calls down, "Who goes there?" "It's me, you dolt," you shout back. Shift change. A pause. Then, "Oh, thought you were a ghost." You resist the urge to climb the wall and slap him. Instead, you mutter something about incompetent coworkers and keep walking. Time drips by. Slowly. Painfully. Like honey made of despair. You think about your life before this. You vaguely remember something about having hobbies. Maybe you used to sing. Maybe you had dreams. But now, your dreams involve dry socks and unbroken lanterns. Your mind starts to wander. You imagine a world with things like central heating, indoor plumbing, and the ability to sit down without your knees making a noise like a rusty hinge. You imagine fruit that doesn't have worms in it. You imagine going to sleep at night. At night, you return to the center of town and lean on the well. It's the only structure in the square that hasn't tried to fall apart yet. You close your eyes for a second. Just a second. You wake up to the sound of someone screaming. Reflex kicks in. You grab your stick, your lantern, and your dignity, though the latter is mostly hypothetical, and run toward the sound. It's coming from the butcher's shop. The door is open. The smell hits you like a trebuchet made of entrails. You gag. Inside, the butcher stands with his hands on his hips, glaring at a rat the size of a small dog. "It took the liver," he shouts. You nod solemnly. "Did you want me to arrest it?" He glares harder. You poke the rat with your stick. It hisses, unrepentant, and vanishes into the shadows. You mark it in your mental notebook under vermin, Bold. You pretend to take notes on a scrap of parchment. It's actually the corner of a beer label. The butcher seems satisfied. You leave, praying you never have to smell that again. The sky is darker now. Stars peek through the clouds like they're ashamed to be seen. You wonder what it would be like to see them without the ever-present fog of burning wood and general medieval grime. Probably nice. You spot a man staggering down the road. You call out, "Halt!" Who goes there? He stops, turns, and throws up into a bucket. Then he falls in after it. You consider your options. Leave him? Drag him home? Arrest him for public disorder? You choose option 4, nudge the bucket into a corner and leave a note that says, "Handle with care." You continue your patrol. Time becomes a blur. Every house looks the same. Every alley smells the same. Every breath is a reminder that you are alive, technically, but not thriving. You hear a bell in the distance. That means it's nearly dawn. You've survived another shift. Barely. You return to the watch station. Your replacement is late. Of course he is. You wait. Eventually, he shows up. Young, fresh-faced, full of energy. You hate him immediately. "You're early," he says. You stare at him until he rethinks his life. You lie back down on the straw. It's somehow wetter than it was yesterday. You pull your cloak over your head and try to remember what it was like to be warm. You fall asleep wondering what terrible nonsense the next night will bring. And you'll be right. You wake up, again, in what you're now fairly sure is just a damp wooden box someone politely calls a guard station. Or perhaps it's a cursed hay museum. Either way, you're horizontal, cold, and profoundly aware of every vertebra in your back staging a protest. There's a rat sitting on your chest, staring at you, judging you. It doesn't scurry when you open your eyes. No, it lingers. Like it's wondering if you're edible yet. You swat it away, and it saunters off, completely unbothered. You make a mental note to name it. Something dignified. Like Sir Chew Salad. You sit up, slowly, like a man rising from the dead, but less enthusiastically. Your body cracks like a medieval pastry left out in the sun too long. Everything itches. Your tunic has developed what you're pretty sure is a second ecosystem, possibly sentient. Outside, the day is in full swing. You can hear chickens being dramatically offended, children yelling in a way that suggests both joy and mild arson, and someone in the next alley arguing with a goat. You stand up, stretch, regret it, and start your day. Again. You are not a hero. You are not a legend. You are a medieval watchman. And today, your job includes supervising market security, which sounds important but actually means stand near vegetables and try not to get stabbed. The market is already busy. Smells at you like a wagon load of questionable hygiene, dried fish, overly ripe apples, human sweat, goat sweat, unwashed fabric, and that weirdly sweet smell that only comes from meat that's thinking about going bad but hasn't fully committed yet. You take your post near the spice merchant. She's terrifying. 4 feet tall, voice like gravel in a meat grinder, and can spot a pickpocket from 30 feet away using only smell. She nods at you. You nod back. It's the closest thing to affection you've experienced all week. You stand there, watching, waiting, shifting your weight from foot to foot like a man trying not to fall asleep while pretending to look busy. A boy tries to steal an onion. The spice merchant hurls a handful of pepper in his face with sniper-level precision. He screams, drops the onion, and flees. You say nothing. You're not paid enough to interfere with justice that swift. Around you, the town pulses with a chaotic rhythm. A woman is selling cabbages shaped like fists. A monk is arguing with a cobbler about the moral implications of sandals. Someone is yelling about eels. You're not sure why, but it's loud and passionate, so you pretend it's normal. A beggar approaches. He smells like time and regret. He asks for coin. You check your pouch. You have one. It's bent and sticky. You give it to him anyway. He thanks you by sneezing on your boots. You regret everything. Just before midday, a small crowd gathers around a man selling miracle tonics. You groan. Every town has one, the quack. This one wears a hat shaped like a dead squirrel and claims his tonic will cure gout, jealousy, and unladylike thoughts. A fight breaks out when someone drinks the tonic and immediately vomits. You wade in to break it up. It ends with you holding the tonic seller in a headlock while he shouts about liver health. You escort him to the town's temporary holding cell. It's a wooden crate with a latch. You put him inside, close the lid, and place a mildly threatening chicken on top of it. You feel strangely proud. Lunch arrives, if you can call it that. Someone hands you a wooden bowl filled with what might be lentils, or rocks, or both. You chew cautiously, as if the bowl might be judging you. It probably is. Medieval cutlery has a personality, and it's always sarcastic. You sit on a barrel to eat. It collapses. A child laughs. You glare at the child. The child throws a pebble at you and runs. You consider retiring. As the afternoon wears on, the market begins to thin. The fishmonger packs up what hasn't rotted. The baker wipes flour from her face and waves at you. You wave back and trip over a turnip. You pretend it didn't happen. Everyone saw. No one says anything. Mutual shame is the town's true currency. You walk back toward the guard station, past the tanner's shop. The smell is aggressive, like someone boiled shoes in a sadness stew. You gag. The tanner nods at you. You nod back while trying not to cry. He's tanning something new today. You don't ask what it is. You stop at the well for water. The rope is frayed. The bucket is cracked. You pull it up and stare into the murky depths of your reflection, wondering when you last looked in a mirror. Then you remember, mirrors cost more than your entire annual pay, and the last time you saw one was when the Baron's nephew threw one into a pond because it mocked his nose. You drink anyway. Immunity is a myth, but you're pretty sure you've built some kind of tolerance to filth. Your body is less temple, more haunted shed. Evening approaches. You return to your post near the gate. A man walks past with a duck in each hand. He's not selling them. He just has them. You salute him. He nods, proudly duck-laden. It's fine. Everything's fine. Your new shift partner arrives. He's 19, smells like optimism, and hasn't yet developed the 1,000-yard stare. You envy him and pity him at the same time. He's excited about tonight. You are not. You explain the rules again. No fires, no shouting, and no letting drunk men duel each other with turnips. It has happened. Twice. Night falls. Again. Because time is a wheel. A damp, muddy wheel. You light your lantern. It flickers in the breeze. The town grows quiet. The air thickens with fog. Sounds become muffled. A door creaks. A dog barks in the distance. You hear your own footsteps and nothing else. The quiet is peaceful, but also eerie, like the town is holding its breath. You begin your patrol. You check the stables. A horse sneezes on you. You check the chapel. Empty, save for one monk snoring in a pew. You check the granary. A cat hisses and vanishes. Everything is as it should be, unsettlingly calm. Midnight comes. You circle back to the square. You sit on the steps of the town hall. The stone is cold. Your cloak is damp. The stars twinkle like they don't care. You close your eyes for a moment. A scream pierces the night. You jump up, instincts kicking in. You run toward the sound. It's the baker's house. Smoke rises from the chimney, but it's not from bread. You pound on the door. No answer. You push it open. The fire is small, a pan left on the hearth, bread forgotten, now scorched black. The baker is passed out, covered in flour. You sigh, open a window, and put out the fire with a bucket of rainwater. She snorts awake and thanks you by offering a loaf of something that tastes like brick. You accept it. Bread is bread. By the time you return to your post, dawn is peeking over the hills like a tired friend showing up late to the party. Your shift partner is asleep on a crate. You nudge him awake. He apologizes and offers you a slice of cheese. It smells like betrayal. You accept anyway. The town begins to stir. Again. The wheel keeps turning. You survived another shift. You didn't die, get stabbed, or accidentally start a class uprising. That counts as a win. You walk back to the station. You lie down. The straw has not improved. You wrap your cloak around your shoulders. The rat returns. You let it sit on your chest. It's quiet. For now. You wake up to the sound of someone outside vomiting with the conviction of a man trying to rid himself of all life's regrets. It echoes through the alley like a Gregorian chant composed entirely of poor decisions and mead. You sit up. You're shivering. You've developed a deep spiritual bond with the damp straw beneath you. It has molded to your body like a sad, itchy memory foam mattress, except it's mostly bugs and regret. You swing your legs over the side of the bed and immediately step on something cold and alive. You freeze. It squeaks. You both agree to pretend it didn't happen. Your boots have not dried. They will never dry. They become more idea than object, a metaphor for suffering, held together by faith and mold. You rub your eyes, which feel like they've been sanded overnight. Your tunic smells like something between fermented onions and despair. You breathe deeply and accept it. You're not here to be fashionable. You're here to be awake and vertical. It's time for the inspection round, which is a fancy way of saying walk around and pretend to notice things while doing your best not to cry. You strap on your belt, which holds your dagger, a half-rotted apple core, and a small pouch of dried peas that you're not sure how you acquired but now feel responsible for. Out on the street, the sun is low and grim, like it's also having a rough morning. The fog is thick, clinging to buildings like guilt, and the air smells of wet dog and smoked eel. Somewhere nearby, a rooster tries to crow and immediately regrets it. The baker is up early. You wave. She waves back with a hand coated in flour and existential fatigue. A new loaf sits cooling on her window ledge. You eye it like a hungry raccoon. She sees you and breaks off a corner. You catch it midair. It's still warm. It's also vaguely crunchy in places where it shouldn't be. You chew anyway. As you walk past the butcher's shop, you hear shouting inside. Something about short ribs and long lies. You decide not to interfere. Nothing good ever happens inside the butcher shop before breakfast. Or after it, really. Down by the docks, which is generous, since the docks are a rotting wooden platform and a dead seagull, a fisherman is complaining loudly to a passing priest about mermaids stealing his nets. The priest is nodding like he's heard it all before. You don't stop them. There's a certain poetic rhythm to their madness that you respect. You check the storage barns. Locked. Nothing stolen. Nothing burning. This is what passes for success now. You mark it in your imaginary notebook under miracles. As you round the corner near the tanner's hut, the stench slaps you in the face like a wet sock made of sins. He's working on a fresh hide, and whatever animal it used to be, it clearly died angry. You nod respectfully and breathe through your mouth. The blacksmith's forge is already lit. Sparks fly as he pounds something vaguely weapon-shaped on the anvil. He nods at you. You nod back. Neither of you says anything. It's the most meaningful conversation you've had all week. So before you get too comfortable wandering through this waking fever dream of a medieval town, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if this kind of historical suffering wrapped in sarcasm actually soothes your soul. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what ungodly hour it is for you. It's genuinely fascinating to see which time zones are crumbling under sleep deprivation together. Now, where were we? Yes. A shriek cuts through the morning fog like a banshee on laundry day. You sprint toward the noise, which is generous because it's more of a painful shuffle. You arrive at the alley near the candlemaker's home, where a woman is waving her arms and pointing at a small sack. You approach cautiously. It's a bag of geese. Alive. Angry. Hissing like boiling tea kettles. Apparently, someone left them there. As a gift? A prank? A warning? You don't know. You don't ask. You pick up the sack, now vibrating violently, and deliver it to the Baron's steward, who nods solemnly and takes it without question. You never speak of it again. Later that day, a man bursts into the square shouting about witches. He's missing a boot and smells like fermented lettuce. You've dealt with him before. He once accused a wheelbarrow of sorcery because it looked at him funny. You calmly escort him to the stocks. He thanks you for listening, then asks if the stocks are haunted. You say yes. He seems pleased. As part of your duties, you attend the town council's midday meeting. It's 5 men in cloaks arguing about fence placement for an hour and a half. One of them falls asleep mid-sentence. Another spends the entire time trying to discreetly eat a boiled egg. You write fence committee still at war in your mental report and excuse yourself before your brain liquefies. Back at your station, you attempt to clean your gear. Your knife is dull, your cloak smells like wet sheep, and your helmet now has moss growing inside it. You consider naming the moss. Possibly Gregory. A messenger arrives around dusk. He's 12, out of breath, and covered in mud. He hands you a wax-sealed letter and collapses in a heap. You open the message. It's from the Baron. It says, increase patrols. Bandits nearby. Classic. You groan audibly and reach for your lantern. More walking. More watching. More trying not to die in a ditch. As night falls, you head toward the outer fields. The torches lining the path are few and mostly sputtering. You pass a scarecrow that looks suspiciously human. You tap it with your stick. It doesn't move. You nod, satisfied, and walk on. You meet up with the second patrol, 2 other watchmen, one with a limp, one with a beard that might be hiding birds. They offer you half a boiled root and news that someone heard shouting in the woods last night. You all agree to pretend you didn't hear that and go your separate ways. You continue along the edge of the village, where the fog thickens and the trees whisper in that creepy way that only trees can. You see a light flicker in the distance. You move toward it. It's a farmer, crouched next to a dead pig, weeping. You ask what happened. He tells you the pig died of heartbreak. You nod, like that makes sense. He offers you a pint of something brewed in a barrel labeled "Don't." You take a sip. Your vision vibrates. You thank him and stumble back to the road. By the time you return to the main gate, your shift partner has fallen asleep again, this time on his feet. You let him stay that way. He looks peaceful, like a statue made of wool and poor judgment. You watch the stars fade as the sky begins to pale with the threat of dawn. You've survived yet another day, another shift, another tour through the mud-caked absurdity that is your medieval life. You climb back into your room, into the straw, into the embrace of dampness and probable lice. You sigh deeply. Sir Salet, the rat, returns. He has brought a crust of bread and a look that says, "We're in this together." You close your eyes. Tomorrow, it starts all over again. You wake up to the sound of screaming, which, in fairness, is kind of normal by now. In the grand catalogue of medieval wake-up calls, screaming ranks somewhere between someone throwing up into a bucket and distant animal murder. But this time, the screaming is specific, sharp, urgent, the kind of scream that makes you immediately consider whether today is the day you finally get stabbed to death by a farmer over a tax misunderstanding. You peel yourself off the straw, which has fused to your back overnight like medieval Velcro, and fumble for your belt. You can't find your left boot. You reach under your bedding. Nothing but something wet and disturbingly warm. You decide that today's a one-boot day. You shove open the door of the station. The scream is coming from a street. You limp outside like a sleep-deprived hunchback and immediately squint against the sun. It's bright, which is offensive. The air is damp and sharp, like the breath of someone who just ate a live herring. You follow the noise down the main street and find a woman wailing in front of a cart. The cart has crashed into a pig. Or the pig crashed into the cart. Hard to say. There is pig everywhere. The woman is screaming about her turnips. You are suddenly part of a very emotional crime scene involving produce and pork. You attempt to mediate, which mostly involves standing awkwardly and saying, all right, while the woman throws turnips at the cart owner and accuses him of sorcery. The cart owner yells that the pig leapt out of the shadows like Satan himself. You tell them both to calm down. They do not. Someone throws a handful of mud. You're not sure who started it, but it definitely ends with you being pelted in the side of the head by what may have once been a meat pie. You finally break it up when a local priest appears and says a few words in Latin. They both go quiet. You're not sure if it was the power of the clergy or the priest's terrible breath. Either way, peace is restored. Mostly. You find both of them a copper coin and make a note to never walk this street barefoot again. Later that morning, you're sent to the town granary to investigate a suspicious noise, which, in your professional opinion, usually turns out to be a goat, or a drunk monk, or both. The granary is big, musty, and filled with the smell of damp grain and rodent ambition. You creep inside, your boots squishing through the ever-present medieval mud. You hear the noise again, something scuttling, maybe squeaking. You draw your knife, which is about as useful as a spoon in a sword fight, and step cautiously toward the sound. You find a boy. Small, dirty, and smug. He's crouched behind a sack of barley with a string in his hand. He's trying to catch mice, with a bent spoon and some dried peas. You ask him what he's doing. He says he's training them. You ask why. He says for war. You leave him alone. That's future you's problem. Back outside. The sun is higher, which means you are now actively sweating beneath a cloak that smells like mildew and damp leather. Your skin sticks to itself in unholy ways. You patrol the northern gate, where nothing ever happens except boredom and occasional suspicious rustling in the hedgerow. You swear you saw a man disappear into it last week, but no one believed you. Not even Sir Chew Sallet. You check in on the guard stationed there today. His name is Alric. He is 15 and speaks exclusively in grunts. He has been watching the same ant for 2 hours. You nod to each other in the universal language of we're both too tired to form words. You give him half a hunk of bread and move on. By midday, your stomach reminds you that it hasn't eaten anything not vaguely rotten in several weeks. You stop by the town cookhouse, which is really just a fire pit, a pot, and a woman named Agatha who has seen too much. She ladles something gray and steaming into your wooden bowl. You ask what it is. She says ood. You don't press. You sit under a tree, the bark jabbing into your spine like a disapproving relative, and eat slowly. The food has the texture of gravel and the flavor of regret. You think there's a twig in it. You eat it anyway. Fiber. A group of children pass by, screaming and covered in mud. One of them is wielding a stick like a sword. He announces that you are a traitor to the realm and charges at you. You swat him aside with your boot. He falls over and laughs. You feel like you've done your civic duty. The afternoon brings more dull patrol. More nodding at the same 3 merchants. More waving off people trying to sell you things you neither want nor can afford. Fresh leeches, one man cries, holding up a jar. You shake your head. He lowers the price. You walk faster. You do your rounds near the local nunnery, where one of the older nuns always winks at you. It's the most flirtation you've had in months. You consider proposing. You keep walking. Someone reports a suspicious smell behind the apothecary. You investigate. It's a dead cat, and also the apothecary's apprentice, who's been hiding behind a barrel trying to learn necromancy. You confiscate his frog. He cries. You give it back. The frog stares into your soul. You take a break by the river, which sounds idyllic until you remember the river is also the town's toilet, laundry, and romantic meeting spot. It smells like sadness and socks. You sit anyway. Your feet ache. Your brain hums with a low-frequency drone of someone slowly losing the will to exist. You doze for 5 minutes before a bug crawls into your ear. You begin the evening shift with a lantern that barely works and a torch that smells like rancid fish oil. The torch makes your eyes water and attracts every insect within 50 miles. You slap them away half-heartedly as you walk the streets. Tonight, the moon is full, and that means one thing: drunk people. So many drunk people. The first one you find is trying to serenade a pig. The pig does not reciprocate. The mun insists he's in love. You arrest him for his own safety and deposit him in the drunk cart. It's an actual cart. With hay. And shame. 2 more are arguing about whether the sky is real. One punches the other for calling the stars tiny holes in the blanket of God. You break it up with a bucket of water. They thank you and immediately start playing dice in the mud. Back near the square, you find a noble son trying to climb a statue while yelling, "I am the Sun King." You gently guide him down. He throws up on your cloak. You resist the urge to set yourself on fire and carry him home instead. His mother gives you a coin and a sad nod. You pocket both. Midnight. The town is quiet again. The fires are low. The windows dark. You do one last patrol, dragging your feet like a mun who's forgotten what comfort feels like. You return to the station. Collapse onto your straw. Close your eyes. And then, the bell rings. You groan. The town bell only rings for fire, war, or serious gossip. You sit up. You listen. A second ring. Then a third. You get up. Your boots squish. Your cloak clings. Your dagger is still dull. But you're a watchman. And someone needs watching. You are so tired you could sleep standing up. Actually, you have. Multiple times. Once in the middle of a funeral procession. They thought you were grieving. You were, but mostly for your spinal cord. Tonight, as the bells ring out again, louder this time, insistent like a toddler with a drum, you roll off your straw mat with all the enthusiasm of a haunted bread loaf. Your knees crack. Your back sounds like it's shuffling a deck of angry playing cards. You grab your gear in the dark. the dagger, the dented helmet, the lantern with a flame so weak it could be extinguished by a strong sigh. You shove your feet into your boots, which are now more fungus than leather, and yank your cloak over your head. It smells like a wet animal that's been emotionally neglected. You step out into the night. The town square is in chaos, which, again, is a generous word. This is medieval chaos, which means a group of 12 people shouting, 2 chickens flapping wildly in the air, and a man running in a circle with his trousers on backward. You approach the cluster of people near the bell tower. A monk is frantically trying to explain something. You lean in, and then I saw it. A light in the sky, moving, darting like the finger of God himself. Of course, another celestial event. That's the 3rd one this month. You already know what this is going to be. A piece of smoldering wood flung into the air by an overzealous blacksmith, or possibly someone trying to launch themselves into sainthood using a barrel of mead in prayer. The townsfolk are buzzing, and not in a fun, tavern full of horny-bards way. No, this is the anxious kind. The God is angry and probably hates us specifically kind. A woman clutches her rosary with white knuckles. A farmer crosses himself so many times it starts to look like a dance routine. A man near the well is screaming about the end times while aggressively eating a raw onion. You tell them all to go home. You say it in your official Watchman voice, which is somewhere between weary authority and I haven't pooped without interruption in 6 days. Miraculously, it works. They scatter. Except for the onion guy. He just keeps screaming. Back at the bell tower, you run into Father Gilbert, who smells like old parchment and minor heresy. He tells you the light may have been divine. You remind him that last time he said that it was a burning outhouse. He mumbles something about signs and wanders off. You log the incident in your mental crime scroll under Sky Shenanigans. Beside it, a doodle of a goose. By the time you make it back to your post, the sky is beginning to gray. Not the beautiful kind. The kind that says it's going to rain and your life is about to get wetter and colder than your ex's heart. The baker's already up. You nod at her. She tosses you something wrapped in cloth. It's a morning bun, which is a polite way of saying slightly stale dough shaped like a regret. You bite it. It crunches. Possibly from flour. Possibly from rocks. As you walk your beat, the first drops of rain begin to fall. It's the kind of rain that feels personal, like it knows you forgot to patch the hole in your boot. You slosh through the streets, pretending not to feel the cold water seeping into your sock. You fail. At the edge of the village, you spot a man loitering near the granary. Hood up. Body tense. You approach cautiously, hand on your dagger, ready to threaten him with stern words and unconvincing violence. You ask what he's doing. He tells you he's listening to the grain. You stare at him. He stares back. You realize he's the same guy who tried to marry a turnip last winter. You tell him the grain probably doesn't have much to say. He disagrees. You walk him back to town just in case he starts nibbling on the wood beams again. You're halfway through your morning circuit when you remember today is tax collection day. And tax collection day is like a medieval version of Black Friday, except no one gets a good deal and at least one person ends up in tears or jail. The steward, who always looks like he's just smelt something unforgivable, calls for the town's watch to maintain order. You're handed a list. You're sent out. First stop, the tanner's. He hands over his coins and mutters something about being cursed. You agree. His entire home smells like doom and squirrel pelts. Second stop, the innkeeper. She tries to give you a chicken instead of coins. You stare at the chicken. It stares back. You accept the chicken. You name it Constable Pecksworth and tie it to your belt. Third stop, Old Lady Morwenna. She tries to pay you in dried herbs and a suspicious smile. You politely decline, and she hisses. You add her to your list of possible witches, or just rude. You return to the steward with a small bag of coins, 2 onions, a dead mouse accidental, and a live chicken. He nods like this is a completely normal haul, and waves you off. You spend the next hour making sure no one's fighting over grain rations, which is like trying to mediate a group therapy session for starving raccoons. People yell. Someone throws a cabbage. You break it up by offering half of Constable Pecksworth as lunch. It works. The chicken looks disappointed. By late afternoon, the rain has stopped, but the mud is now ankle-deep and spiritually offensive. You find yourself standing watch at the edge of town again, staring into the horizon and wondering how many medieval careers involve this much trench foot. A traveling bard passes by. He offers to sing you a ballad for a coin. You tell him you're broke. He offers to sing for free. He's terrible. You give him a coin to make him stop. You consider quitting. You won't. But you consider it. The evening comes with a slow drip of fog and the smell of someone burning something they definitely shouldn't be. You follow the scent to find a teenager roasting what appears to be a boot. He says it's for the flavor. You say nothing and walk away. Dinner is a communal pot of stew shared with the other watchmen. It contains turnip, bark, and something labeled meat on the pot. You chew slowly and think about mortality. Night falls. You make one last round. The torchlight flickers. The gates creak. Somewhere, an owl hoots in a tone that suggests even it is unimpressed with your life choices. You pass the bakery. The smell is comforting, like warmth and things you can't afford. You pass the church. It stands still, heavy with secrets and pigeons. You pass the stocks. They're empty, for now. You return to your post. You sit. You sigh. You let your head rest against the damp wood. Sir Chew Salad appears again, this time dragging a beetle. He offers it to you like a cat with a trophy. You decline politely. He eats it. You watch the stars fade. You hear the distant crow of the rooster, who, like you, is sick of this nonsense. The town wakes. And so do you. Again. You wake up with a start. At this point, waking up without a minor panic attack would almost be unsettling. But this time, it's not a pig screaming or a tax riot or even the smell of burning mystery meat. No, this time, it's your fellow watchman, Wolfstan, kicking you gently in the shin and muttering, "Up." It's market day. Two words that strike terror into the sleep-deprived soul. Market day. The medieval equivalent of Black Friday crossed with a livestock auction and a public hygiene crisis. Every trader, farmer, hustler, and town lunatic for miles around descends on the square. They bring carts of goods, animals, poorly tuned instruments, inexplicable smells, and enough shouting to wake the saints. You stand, groaning like an old door, and stretch your limbs until something pops that probably shouldn't. You drag your feet through the gritty straw, dunk your face in a basin of lukewarm water, more bacteria than actual cleansing, and fumble into your boots. One is still damp from the last rainstorm. The other is now home to something alive and fast-moving. You don't investigate. You just squish it back in and move on. You grab your staff, slightly cracked, but still solid enough to discourage pickpockets and toddlers in revolt, and step out into the gray dawn. The market is already alive. Not in a romantic, storybook way. In a why is someone already screaming about cheese way. Stalls are going up. Chickens are flapping. A group of jugglers are arguing with a mun selling pig lard. Two cows are fighting over a discarded turnip. You spot a child trying to trade mud for apples. Someone's stolen the mayor's ceremonial goat again. So before you get too comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. I read all of them. Even the ones that just say, "I fell asleep in 3 minutes." That's the dream. Now, back to the chaos. Your job during market day is simple. Prevent fights, stop theft, locate the goat, and above all, try not to die. You begin your first lap through the stalls. Immediately, you're hit with the full sensory bouquet of the medieval market. The pungent aroma of dried fish, mingling gently with unwashed humanity, hot onions, and disappointment. Your eyes water. Your nose burns. You press forward like a brave little nasal soldier. A spice merchant waves something orange and powdery under your nose and yells, "Cinnamon." Straight from cafe. You doubt it. Cafe is thousands of miles away. And this powder smells suspiciously like crushed beetle and floor. Next, a mun selling holy relics. You stop him to inspect. He claims the toenail belonged to St. Cuthbert. You point out it's very clearly a chicken bone. He insists St. Cuthbert was part chicken. You let him go. You don't have the energy to argue theology with someone who's wearing 2 left shoes. Further down, a troupe of fire dancers are setting up, which you know is a bad idea because last time they performed, someone's beard exploded. You pause at the tavern stall where the innkeeper's wife is selling restorative mead. You ask what it restores. She says your will to live. You buy a cup. It tastes like sadness filtered through honey. You drink it anyway. You spot the goat. It is standing on top of a barrel, chewing on someone's laundry. You begin pursuit. The goat sees you. The goat runs. You chase the goat. You chase it through stalls, under carts, over a mun selling clay pipes, and finally into a laundry line. You become entangled in damp wool. The goat escapes. Again. You return to the square, slightly humiliated and covered in someone's undergarments. You're approached by a noblewoman. She has a complaint. Of course she does. Apparently, a boy of no particular breeding tried to sell her a magic rat. You locate the boy. You ask him about the rat. He holds it up proudly and says it can do math. You ask it what 2 + 2 is. It poops in his hand. You confiscate the rat and give it to the herbalist who thinks it's cute. Crisis averted. A bard starts singing a very bawdy song about a friar and a duck. People begin gagging. You make a note to keep an eye on him. Since last time he sang, 2 couples eloped and someone lost their shoes to a game of dice. It's not even noon yet. You stop to eat. Eat is a generous term. You obtain a pastry from a suspiciously moist basket. It's hot, greasy, and filled with a meat-like substance that may have once mooed. You eat it standing up, trying to avoid eye contact with the dog watching you mournfully from a nearby puddle. You're called over to break up a fight between 2 elderly women. The argument? One accused the other of cursing her cabbages. You point out that everyone's cabbages are terrible this year. They both slap you. You move on. In the middle of the square, a group of acrobats are forming a human pyramid. You stare at them, waiting for it to go wrong. It does. A mun falls, screams, and lands in a barrel of salted eels. You fish him out. He thanks you. You realize he's the same guy who once tried to juggle knives during Lent. You're called to inspect a cart selling love potions. The seller is a woman with wild eyes and a voice like wet gravel. She insists they work. You ask her to demonstrate. She drinks one, then kisses a tree. You nod and walk away. Midday. The sun is now at full blaze, and the air is thick with heat, livestock, and regret. Your shirt is sticking to your body like medieval cling film. Your boots squelch with every step. You're sweating from places you didn't know had sweat glands. You're summoned to resolve a dispute involving a chicken, a debt, and 3 half-siblings who all claim ownership of the same pair of boots. You pretend to take notes, nod solemnly, and then tell them to sort it out the honorable way. They start throwing cabbage at each other. You call that a win. The goat returns. This time, it's dragging a length of stolen ribbon and seems to be wearing a hat. You sneak up. You pounce. You miss. You land in a basket of overripe tomatoes and accept that this is your life now. Eventually, you manage to corner the goat near the dung heap. You seize it. It bites you. You carry it back to the mayor's house, bleeding slightly and questioning every decision that brought you here. The mayor is delighted. He names the goat Justice and offers you a piece of cheese in thanks. It smells like feet and tastes worse. Evening falls. The crowd begins to thin. Merchants pack up their wares. Some count coins. Others count missing fingers. You do one last patrol through the square, kicking over empty baskets and nodding at the handful of drunks already asleep in the mud. You sit by the well. Your feet ache. Your shirt is soaked. Your soul is a wrung-out sponge. The stars appear overhead, quietly judging. You hear music in the distance. Someone has lit a fire near the edge of the village. A child chases a beetle with a kind of pure joy you vaguely remember feeling once, maybe before you became a glorified goat chaser. You lean back against the stone and let your eyes close. Market day is over. You survived. Barely. You wake up to screaming. Again. At this point, your brain doesn't even react with fear anymore. It's more of a ugh, what now, sort of exasperated sigh that happens inside your skull. You peel one eye open. The sky is still dark. The air smells like damp moss and despair. You are curled up beside the town, well, like a very confused squirrel. The screaming continues. You don't rush. You shuffle. Rushing implies hope. You find the source of the sound near the alehouse. It's Tom, the local miller, standing in his nightshirt and shouting something about demons in his flour. You've heard this one before. Last time it was mice. The time before that, It was his wife's cousin pretending to be a ghost so he could steal oats. You squint at him, expression blank, and mutter, "Show me." He does. You follow him across the village, boots sloshing through last night's rain, past the pig yard, a smorgasbord of smells that should be a war crime, and into the mill. It's not demons. It's raccoons. Or something raccoon-adjacent. You're not entirely sure. They're angry, and they've made a nest in a flour sack. You lock eyes with one of them. He does not fear you. He looks into your soul and finds it lacking. You retrieve a broom and try to evict the demon rodents. It turns into a chase scene. You fall. Flour explodes. You're now covered head to toe in white powder. The miller thanks you by offering a stale biscuit. You eat it anyway. It tastes like gravel and disappointment. You stumble back outside just in time to hear the bells begin to toll. Not the good bells. The bad bells. The bells that say something has gone horribly wrong, and it's probably your problem now. You jog to the main square. Jogging is a strong word. You wobble at a brisk pace. People are gathering. At the gate, you find it, a cart. It stopped just outside town. The driver is slumped forward, unmoving. A noble seal is branded into the wood. 2 guards lie beside the cart, pale and still. You inch closer. There's no blood. No wounds. Just stillness. Like sleep, but a kind you don't wake from. The village priest arrives, breathing heavily. He makes the sign of the cross, so many times it looks like he's swatting flies. He declares it a plague cart. Of course he does. A murmur rises from a crowd. Plague. The word alone is enough to clear a street faster than a burning chicken. You are tasked with helping dispose of the bodies. Because of course you are. You tie a cloth over your face, though it does nothing except make it harder to breathe. You douse your clothes in vinegar. The priest insists this will help. You're skeptical. You help pull the bodies down. They're light. Too light. You can feel the bones beneath the skin. One of them has a coin still clutched in his hand. You pry it out with a whispered apology. You burn the cart. Burn the cloth. Burn everything. Just to be safe. Back in town, the steward orders everyone to stay indoors. He declares a quarantine. You know what that means. More patrols. More work. Less sleep. You are now, officially, both watchman and plague enforcer. Lucky you. By midday, the streets are quiet. Too quiet. Like a theater set after the actors have fled. No children playing. No chickens arguing. Even the drunks are silent. You patrol with your usual tools, a stick, a torch, and a completely unwarranted sense of responsibility. You knock on doors. You listen for coughing. You tell people to boil their water, even though you know most of them will ignore you and continue drinking straight from the river, which is 30% water, 70% trout urine. You walk past the apothecary, who is frantically grinding herbs and muttering spells under her breath. You walk past the baker, who's baking plague bread made with garlic and desperation. You walk past the well again, now sealed with a wooden lid and a very dramatic skull drawing to discourage drinking. You end up near the monastery. They have taken in a handful of the sick. You peek through the door. The smell hits you first, sweat, herbs, something coppery underneath it all. Inside, a monk is praying over a boy. The boy is breathing shallow. His skin is pale and slick. His eyes flicker open when he sees you. He whispers something you can't hear. You don't stay long. Outside, you take a deep breath. The air feels heavy, like the sky is pressing down. That night, you hear the bell again, but not from a tower, from a church. It tolls for the dead. The next morning, 3 more people are gone. You help dig graves. The earth is hard, damp, and resentful. Your hands blister. Your back screams. You don't complain. No one does. The silence is louder than any morning. The village falls into a rhythm of fear. You walk the empty streets like a ghost in training. You check on the sick. You deliver herbs. You say kind words you don't believe. You sit with an old man as he dies. He tells you a story about fishing. You pretend to smile. He doesn't wake up again. You watch 2 children bury their cat, and then ask if they'll have to bury their mother too. You don't answer. You stand under the moonlight and wonder if it will come for you next. And somehow, through it all, you endure. You learn to sleep upright in doorways. You learn to ignore the constant ache in your joints. You learn to find small comforts, a loaf of bread that doesn't taste like sorrow, a dog that wags its tail when it sees you, a moment of silence that isn't laced with dread. You learn how to survive without hope. Because being a medieval watchman isn't about bravery, or strength, or even justice. It's about endurance. And you, poor soul, are still here. Barely. You wake up cold. And not the usual medieval cold, not that there's a hole in your roof and your boots are still damp from 2 weeks ago kind of cold. This is a special, extra punishing, the gods are angry and took it out on the weather cold. Your breath curls visibly in the air. The blanket, if you can call it that, clings to you with all the insulating power of wet moss. You are, as always, sleeping in the watch hut, a term that suggests more architectural integrity than the glorified shed of damp planks and old straw you're actually in. You sit up. Immediately regret it. Your spine audibly protests. Something cracks. It might be your back. It might be the layer of ice forming on your pillow. Your toes are numb. Your nose is wet. Your soul feels like it crawled out of your body to find someplace warmer. And welcome, dear viewer, to winter. You struggle into your tunic, which is cold, stiff, and smells like mildew, because there is no such thing as dry laundry in a medieval winter. Outside, frost has turned the entire village into a crunchy monochrome nightmare. The mud is frozen, the well has iced over, and your boots feel like refrigerated bricks strapped to your feet. Your shift starts at dawn, which, this time of year, arrives at the speed of molasses and with about as much enthusiasm. You trudge through the slush. And yes, slush. Because the one mercy of medieval winter is that it occasionally melts just enough to flood the streets with icy water and then refreeze again at sunset, creating a festive death trap of frozen puddles and broken ankles. You pass the baker's shop. No smell of bread today. The firewood is short, flour's gone moldy, and the baker's apprentice has frostbite. You keep walking. There's nothing more tragic than bread that could have been. At the edge of the village, the outer gate groans like it resents being awake too. You relieve the previous watchman, a man named Garrett, who looks like he hasn't slept since October. He hands you the horn, mutters God help you, and disappears into the fog like a sad ghost in itchy wool. Your job today? Watch the road. For what? No one really says. Raiders? Wolves? Angry tax collectors? Your own creeping sense of futility? It's unclear. You climb the watch platform. By platform, we mean a slightly elevated wooden perch that sways when you move and has one loose board that makes you nervous every time you step on it. You scan the road. Nothing. Just frozen mud, skeletal trees, and the occasional suicidal crow. You settle in for the day. Let me pause here and say, if you're still awake and still enjoying this strangely comforting descent into medieval despair, now's a great time to like the video and subscribe, if that's your kind of thing. And let me know in the comments what time it is where you are, and whether you're under a blanket, in a weird hotel, or listening from a cold train platform in Iceland. You people fascinate me. No judgment, just admiration. Back to your post. You stand still for as long as you can. Then you start pacing to keep your blood moving. After that fails, you do knee bends. Then jumping. Then you give up and just start talking to the crows. One of them looks at you like he might answer. Hours pass. The sun emerges briefly, not so much with warmth as with passive-aggressive illumination. Just enough to highlight the steam rising from the dung piles. You take that as a sign to eat something. You pull out your lunch. It's frozen. You bite into it anyway. It's half a turnip and a crust of bread, so hard it could double as a projectile weapon. You gnaw at it like a determined beaver, feeling each tooth vibrate with effort. Eventually, you give up and tuck it under your tunic, hoping body heat will make it chewable by sunset. A figure appears on the road. You squint. It's a traveler, hunched, wrapped in layers of fabric that look like they were stolen from 5 different animals and 2 curtains. He trudges closer. You yell the required greeting, state your business. He mutters something about messages for the Lord and flashes a seal. You wave him through. You doubt he's a threat. He has the posture of someone who's lost a fight with a mule and time itself. You resume pacing. A dog wanders by. You consider making friends. It snarls. You reconsider. By afternoon, your nose is running, your fingers are wooden, and your boots have absorbed enough ice water to qualify as small ponds. You retreat briefly to the hut to warm up by the brazier. The brazier is out of fuel. You stare at it. It stares back. You find a small pile of damp kindling and attempt to light it. You fail. The flint breaks. You curse softly and feel the brazier judge you. Outside, it starts to snow. Of course it does. Big, heavy flakes, the kind that stick to your eyelashes and fill your boots even while you're wearing them. Visibility drops to a few yards. Sounds get muffled. The world becomes a soft, cold blur. And still, you watch. That's the thing about being a medieval watchman. There's no pause button. No calling in sick. No winter break. Just standing. And waiting. And freezing. Eventually, you're summoned. The steward wants you for torch duty. You're too numb to protest. Torch duty is simple. Walk around town at night lighting and maintaining the torches that line the main roads. It's supposed to prevent crime, but mostly it just helps drunk people find their way home. You carry the torch pole. You walk. You light torches one by one, each stubborn as sin, the wind fighting you at every step. The oil is half frozen. The wicks are damp. Your hands cramp. Children peep at you from behind shutters. You hear them whisper, "The fireman." You feel like a ghost with a job. A drunk stumbles out of the tavern and thanks you for lighting the stars. You smile politely and move on. The tavern smells of smoke, ale, wet dog, and someone's boiled underpants. You long to go inside. But warmth is for paying customers, not underpaid municipal functionaries with frostbite in both knees. You pass the apothecary's house. Smoke drifts from her chimney. She waves at you. You wave back. Your fingers crack. You light the final torch. The village glows faintly in the snow, like a memory of itself. You return to the hut. You peel off your boots. One toenail is gone. Another is purple. You consider crying. Instead, you eat your now slightly softened lunch. You crawl under the straw. A rat scurries past your face. You let it be. You're too tired to care. Your breath curls up into the dark. Winter in the medieval world isn't about thriving. It's about enduring. Through the cold, the dark, the isolation, you keep standing. You keep lighting torches. You keep showing up. Because someone has to. Even if no one notices. Even if the only reward is a few quiet hours before the next terrible thing happens. You drift off to sleep listening to the snow settle on the roof. It creaks ominously. You decide not to worry.